2025 Lower Merion Board of Commissioners meeting. We have 3 meetings this evening. We have a Police Committee meeting, a Finance Committee meeting, and a Building and Planning Committee meeting. And before we start, please silence your cell phones. There's amplifying equipment available for those who are having difficulty hearing during the meeting. The room is also equipped with telecoil technology. And when the floor is open for public comment, comment will first be taken from those who are attending in the room. I'm going to ask that you use this podium to your left, to my right, and then we will turn to the people who are attending virtually. We ask that you introduce yourself, say where in the township, generally what neighborhood you live in, before beginning your comments. So with that, we're going to start our first committee meeting of the evening. That is the Police Committee. I recognize its chair, Vice President Kramer.
Thank you, President Sinai. We have 3 items on tonight's agenda, but before we get started, I'd just like to make an announcement about our Community Watch Patrol training. Next Tuesday, January 21st at 7 p.m. in this boardroom, the Police Department will be partnering with Lower Merion Community Watch to provide patrol training for residents who are interested in being part of our Community Watch program. Getting involved with Lower Merion Community Watch is a great way to make a positive impact in your neighborhood. You'll not only be contributing to the well-being of your neighbors, but you'll also have the opportunity to build relationships and connections with others in your community. The program is open to township residents who are at least 18 years old. Registration is required for the Community Watch Patrol training. Please visit lmcommunitywatch.org for more info and to register for the training. And with that, we'll turn to our first agenda item, police promotional examination for position of lieutenant. I will make a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners authorizing the township manager to request the Civil Service Commission conduct a competitive examination to establish an eligibility list for the position of lieutenant of police. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Bernheim. And I will turn things over to Superintendent Block for an explanation.
Thank you, Vice President Kramer. Good evening. The request this evening comes that we're requesting that the board authorize our township manager, Mr. McNeely, to notify the Civil Service Commission that we are requesting a competitive testing for the position of lieutenant. There are 2 reasons we're making this request this evening. One is we have a vacancy in one of the lieutenant's position, and that vacancy occurred back in June of 2024. The other reason is the existing list at the time has expired that had 2 candidates on it. That expired on November 22nd, 2024. So as a result of that, under the civil service guidelines, we would need to conduct a competitive examination for the position of lieutenant, and that's the request this evening.
Thank you. Madam Secretary, do we have any comment in the room? Any public comment in the room? Madam Secretary, anybody online with comment?
No one has their hand raised.
Okay. Any questions or comments from the board? Okay, I'll say it makes sense to me. So I will ask for a vote. All in favor? With Commissioner Rossman and Kramer, I assume you are in support. Okay. Everybody else? Okay. Any opposed? No. Madam Secretary, that passes unanimously.
Thank you very much.
Thank you. Don't go too far. We're moving on to our second agenda item, an authorization to advertise an ordinance, Chapter 145, Vehicles and Traffic, Cynwyd Road Parking and Circulation Changes. Authorization to work with KRE MERG, Cynwyd, to implement related parking and circulation changes. Madam Secretary, do I need to read the whole motion?
Yes.
Yes. Okay.
Sorry, it's long.
All right, get ready. I'll make a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners authorizing the Township Secretary to advertise notice of intent to adopt an ordinance to amend the Code of the Township of Lower Merion, Chapter 145 thereof, entitled Vehicles and Traffic, Article 15, Schedules 145-104, Schedule 4, one-way highways, by making Cynwyd Road one-way in an easterly direction from the bend at the access drive of 1 Cynwyd Road to Union Avenue, and amending 145-106, Schedule 6, intersections restricted as to turns and through traffic by prohibiting entrance onto Cynwyd Road in an easterly direction from the bend at the access drive of 1 Cynwyd Road, and by amending 145-106, Schedule 6, intersections restricted as to turns and through traffic by allowing right turns only for traffic heading in a southerly direction on Cynwyd Road at Union Avenue, and amending 145-119 Schedule 19 special purpose parking zones by adding a limited hours child drop-off pickup zone on the north side of Cynwyd Road from a point starting 34 feet west of Union Avenue and extending westerly the distance of 120 feet on Cynwyd Road, and authorizing township staff to work with KRE Merck Cynwyd to ensure installation of the necessary physical changes such as signage, pavement markings, and channelized island to the satisfaction of the township by KRE Merck Cynwyd at their expense, subject to adoption of the previously referenced draft ordinance at a future date. Do I have a second? Thank you, Commissioner Bernheim. Ernie or Superintendent Block, who would like to give an explanation?
I can give a little bit of an introduction, although most of this should be familiar to you because you've approved this exact action in concept back in September. This action, as you went through the long explanation there, will make Cynwyd Road one-way easterly towards Union for the one block in front of the new development on that block. We will then, we will have the meters on that block, 5 to 8 of them removed and designated as a special purpose parking zone for a child drop-off. There will be essentially a construction of a pork chop, if you will, at Cynwyd Road and Union to prevent left turns there. So it'll be right turn only out of Cynwyd Road onto Union. And you approved it in concept. We've been working with the developer who's here tonight and has some folks here. Of course, we also have the police department and our parking director here for any questions, but that is essentially what this ordinance does. It implements what you approved in concept back in September. It also includes provisions that the owner, the property owner, is going to take care of the expense of the building the pork chop, if you will, and the signage and the revisions that are needed to put it into effect, as well as provide some reimbursement for loss of meters.
Okay, thank you, Manager McNeely. Sure, we're gonna have public comment.
I just wanted, if I may, thank you very much, to rudely interrupt. There was one other aspect of this that people may recall, and that was going out to the local residents right in the area to get their approval, and I understand the developer went and did that and got, if not just about all of them, if not all of them, to go ahead and state that they had no objection to doing this.
Thank you, Commissioner Bernheim. Any comment from those in the room? Madam Secretary, anyone online?
No one has their hand raised.
Okay, thank you. Any further comment or questions from anyone on the board? All right, with that, we'll take a vote. All in favor? Any opposed? All right, Madam Secretary, that passes unanimously. And last but not least, we move on to agenda item number 3, authorization of an intergovernmental agreement with Lower Merion School District for a stop-arm camera school bus safety program. I'll make a motion to recommend to the Board of Commissioners authorizing execution of an intergovernmental agreement between the Township and Lower Merion School District to establish a stop-arm camera school bus safety program. Do I have a second? Thank you, President Sinai. Superintendent Block, would you like to weigh in?
Yes, thank you, Vice President Creamer. So this is before the committee this evening. Essentially, it's an intergovernmental agreement between the school district of Lower Merion and Lower Merion Township, the Township and the Police Department, to enter into this agreement so that they have the ability to contract with Bus Patrol to put high-definition cameras on their school buses to monitor for school bus violations when the buses are pulling to pick up or discharge students throughout the township in the school day. So in order for this to be able to happen with the school district, we have to enter into the agreement with them, and it's the responsibility of the police department to validate the violations that occur. So what happens is the high-definition camera will catch the vehicles that are violating the red flashing lights. That video comes from Bus Patrol, which is the proprietary company that installs the cameras and has the software. It is then sent over to the police department. The officer verifies that there was a violation, and they sign off on it, and it goes back to bus patrol, and that results in a civil citation that's issued to the owner of the vehicle, not the driver of the vehicle. It goes to the owner of the vehicle, and then they have the ability to either pay the penalty, which is a $300 civil fine, and there's no other punitive action taken on their driver's license or their vehicle registration, or they have the right to appeal that, and then there's a hearing that's scheduled before PennDOT officials. The Department of Transportation has the hearing for that, and then if they do not agree with the hearing, they would like to further appeal that, it would go before the magistrate in a trial de novo. So the police department supports this. We've looked at it. We think it's very important with respect to the safety of our school children, you know, that are boarding and deboarding the buses on a daily basis. I do have prior experience with this. When I was the police chief in Upper Moreland, it was adopted. The program worked very well. And that township is 1/3 the size of Lower Merion Township, and we were averaging between 275 and 300 violations a month. Wow. So it's something that we hope that, you know, it'll promote additional awareness with our motoring public, but it's also, most importantly, the safety of our children. And we also have representatives from the school district here this evening if there's any questions that the board would have for them as well.
Thank you, Superintendent. Any comment from those in the room? Madam Secretary, anybody online?
No one has their hand raised.
Okay. Any questions or comments from those on the board? Commissioner Grimes.
Yeah, thank you, Vice President Kramer. Superintendent, I just want to clarify something that I read in some of the correspondence that was sent around about this, and also I did take a look at the statute. So there's a $300 fine for someone who violates this rule. The township would get, the police department would get $25. That's correct?
Correct, per violation.
Right. And that's the statutory amount the township would get, correct?
That's correct.
Okay, so there's no flexibility. It's my understanding that all the township has, all the police department has to do is to confirm that the violation occurred, but that if there's any enforcement, like someone doesn't pay the fine and it goes to this hearing, it would be up to the school district to attend the hearing, so one of our officers doesn't spend hours either at a PennDOT hearing or at the district court. Is that correct?
If there's an appeal to the district court, it would require the officer that approved it to go there. It's minimal with that happening throughout the Commonwealth, because when the program first started, when the violations were approved, you would appeal it to the court. You'd have to have a hearing. The state realized the impact it had on local law enforcement, and that's why this was changed to a hearing officer with PennDOT. We've looked at the averages. Maybe 1 or 2 a year are appealed to the district court. So I don't believe it's going to be a burden to the police department.
Yeah, because that's, I think it's a great program. It sounds, you know, the school district wants to do it, which is terrific. We should pursue it. My concern is the amount of time that we spend, that our police spend for $25. But if you're not particularly concerned, then it's fine.
And a lot of them are not appealed, Commissioner, because when you receive the violation in the mail, there is a link that you can enter into your computer, and it brings up your violation to the owner of the vehicle, so they can actually see the video. It's captured and it goes out on the violation notice. So a lot of times they'll look at it and they'll realize somebody was driving my car and they went through, you know, they failed to stop for the school bus, so they pay the fine.
Yeah, okay. And the school district, frankly, if they have to go to a PennDOT hearing, it's not particularly lucrative for them also, but that's not, respectfully, that's not our problem.
Correct.
So, all right, well, thank you.
And
Thank
this
you.
helps us, I'm sorry.
What's that?
Is there another question?
Yeah.
Thank you, Commissioner Grimes. Any other comment? Commissioner Gavin and then Commissioner Bernheim.
Commissioner Kramer. Superintendent, obviously the goal of this program is to deter this behavior, correct?
Yes, it is.
So from your experience, you said there were about 275 to 300
incidents annually. Did it decrease over time as people became more aware from your experience of this program?
That's an excellent question. And actually, just to clarify that, it was 275 to 300 violations per month when we started the program. And I felt that, I figured, that there's an education process, which we did. We put out a bunch of information about it when we started doing the enforcement with the school district. But the numbers never dropped, surprisingly. I thought they would. So we were averaging, like I said, between 275 and 300 citations or violations a month.
Okay. Do you think there's anything we could do to help make people aware? Obviously, somebody who gets a citation, they're probably going to be aware of it and not do it again. But to make it more broadly, known, what's the plan to educate the public about this program?
So this is scheduled, if everything's approved, to begin in August of 2025 for the 2025-2026 school year, because it's going to take some time to get the equipment in there. We will do a public relations campaign with the school district, making sure everybody's aware of what's going to happen in the township when this goes into effect. Like I said, we did it. We did a pretty significant one in Upper Moreland, and we continued to have those violations. But we will put it out through social media. We'll have print media as well as the television media here. We'll do a press conference with the school district so people are aware of it, and we'll continue to push that information out via our social media platforms so people are aware of it.
Right. And sadly, what I've seen from taking my kids to school, that a lot of the parents, after dropping off their kids, are, speeding out of the school. They're rushing to get there. You would think it's not the parents of the students who are doing the violations, but in a lot of cases, sadly, it is. Or can we ensure that we're going to work with the school district, on the first day of school, send notes home with the kids or emails out to the parents, letting them know about this and, really reinforcing it that way as well?
Absolutely. Our PIO, who is here this evening, she will work with the school district PIO to make this happen, Amy Buckman. So we will have a robust campaign, making everybody aware of the new enforcement standards that are going to happen with this. And it's to me, it's very important. It's a matter of safety for the school children. And the other thing is it's a $300 fine. Right now, if a police officer stops somebody that violates the red flashing lights on the school bus, it's a $385 fine. It's an automatic suspension of one's driver's license for 60 days. And when your license is reinstated, there's 5 points assessed against your license. So it affects you in a couple different ways. Clearly, it affects your pocketbook or your wallet, but it may also have impacts on your insurance rates too, with a license suspension. So with the automated camera system, it's just a civil penalty.
Yeah, we should definitely remind people of that as well. That whether it's automated or through a police officer, there are real significant consequences to doing this. So yeah, thank you, and thank you for bringing this to us, and for everything you're going to do to get this out to the public. Really appreciate it.
Thank you, Commissioner Gavin. Commissioner Bernheim.
Thank you very much. And Superintendent and Manager, thank you both for being so responsive and so quickly responsive to questions that I had asked earlier along the topic area of making sure the police aren't overburdened, with the potential aspect of this. When you hear in the example I got out of Easton, 300 per month from one school district, that's a sticker shock type number. But feel free to correct me if I have this wrong as well from what you just stated. The citation goes to the owner of the car. If the owner wasn't the driver, that is a defense that they can raise, that they are right. Because if I heard you, and maybe I didn't hear you correctly, is that the owner nevertheless getting this, they would automatically have to pay it. But if they're not the driver, I believe that's a defense. Is that correct?
It is. It is a defense that they can bring up.
They can raise.
They've got to establish that.
Right, and as I recall the statute, that's a defense, and I'm not suggesting this. I think people who do this, I'd rather see the fine that you all can impose, because we're talking safety for children, but they're not required to say, oh, I wasn't driving, it was Commissioner Zeloff. But, okay, so, all right.
Thank you, Commissioner
Thank you very
Bernheim.
much.
Thank you. President Sinai.
Thanks, Vice President Kramer. So I don't have any questions. They got answered by email before. I just want to say this is actually a topic I get a ton of email about from constituents saying, Sergeant Coldflush is smiling. I forward them all to him. And constituents saying, isn't there something that can be done about this? Like, my kids are at risk, sending us a video from their Ring cameras that we can't do anything with. And so I think this is super. I think this is terrific. This is the school district's program that we're simply supporting. I commend the school district for bringing this forward and giving us the opportunity to support it. I think this is directionally it helps safety, right? Commissioner Gavin's right. Like how much it doesn't make it worse, right? It might make it a little better, any better. And, even if it deters just one of these, it's worth doing. Management has assured us, a number of us have asked the same question, which is, do we have the capacity to support this in LMPD? And the answer has been consistently yes, easily, that we can do it. So I think this is terrific. I'm looking forward to supporting it. I'm glad it's in front of us. Thank you, Vice President Kramer.
Thank you. And Commissioner Zelloff.
Thank you, Vice President Kramer. And I want to echo what's just been said and add to it. Because my experience has been when residents complain, it's very hard for LMPD to be at how many bus stops? Over 100?
Well over 100.
Well over 100 township-wide. 2 times a day or 4 times a day to try and catch what parents see. I think this is going to make LMPD more productive. And this is long overdue. I commend the school district and the school board for getting to this point. And I think that, I know they've gone through a process to get to this point, and working with PD, I think the results are going to have an impact on improving safety of school children using our school buses, and I strongly support this. Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Zelloff. Any other board comment, questions? I just want to say yes, thank you to the police department and to the school district for bringing this program to the township, and I hope that the trend line goes the way we want, right? And that if and when neighboring townships also adopt it, that over time people will learn not to engage in this dangerous behavior. I'm sure many parents will thank you. So with that, we'll take a vote. All in favor? Any opposed? Madam Secretary, that passes unanimously, and that concludes the business of the Police Committee. President Sinai.
Thank you very much, Vice President Kramer. Our next committee meeting for the evening is the Finance Committee, and I recognize its chair, Commissioner Zelloff.
Thank you, President Sinai. Happy New Year, everyone. Tonight, the Finance Committee has 7 items on its agenda. We're going to start with consideration of contract awards. Our CFO, Adam Chomsky, is with us. Adam, the first item is a significant item in terms of the dollars, and it is stormwater, sanitary sewer line, and manhole reconstruction. Can you tell us more?
Yes, good evening, Commissioners. First, before you tonight is a recommendation of 2 contracts for award. The larger of the 2 being $1,283,231 to Performance Pipelining for storm and sanitary sewer lining, as well as $322,423 to Mr. Rehab for manhole reconstruction. Collectively, these contracts total just over $1.6 million. This program I like to think of as the paving list of our sanitary sewer infrastructure. It's identified annually through our I&I program, various areas throughout the township to improve, to deal with the aging infrastructure and make those improvements over a recurring period. I'm happy to answer any other questions.
All right, before we get to questions, I'm going to make a motion. I'll move that the Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to award a contract for stormwater, sanitary sewer lining, and manhole reconstruction to Performance Pipelining in the amount of $1,283,231, and Mr. Rehab in the amount of $322,423. Both low bidders in accordance with bids received on Thursday, December 19th, with the recommendation of the Chief Financial Officer and the approval of the Director of Public Works and Township Engineer. Do I have a second? I do, from President Sinai. Okay. So thank you for that, Adam. The motion's been made and seconded. Just a couple questions. Can you tell us the location for this work?
I know Mill Creek Road, which is a long road, I'm not exactly sure where thereupon, is one area. I'd have to look at my notes, however, for some of the other areas impacted.
Ernie, do you want to add? Is this one location or is this multiple?
No, it's multiple
locations?
across the
It is
township.
multiple locations for lining and then even more multiple locations for manhole rehab and sealing. So it's scattered sites.
Okay. It has 5 different jobs in our CIP. And while we're awarding contracts for $1.6 million, that's before us. If you noted this, I didn't hear it or don't recall. We have a PA Small Water and Sewer Grant for $500,000, which takes our net cost to just over $1.1 million. So, do committee members have any questions on this item or any comments? Commissioner Bernhardt.
So, Adam, if your predecessor was watching this, he'd be thinking right now to himself, ha ha, he's your problem now. So here's the question I have. There are a number of things where it says CM and then a number, and then it talks about traffic control and bypass pumping. So Precision Piping, for many of them, has a 0 charge. Some of the other folks that submitted things have a $2,000 charge. What is the traffic control and bypass pumping? Do you know what that's about?
Well, certainly on the traffic control, that's if any areas are in public right-of-way on township streets, and they need traffic control for the public safety of the work in that area. Our engineers did reach out to confirm their pricing on that, and they just kind of worked in the pricing and on other line items, and that's why you see a 0. We made sure to confirm that they do plan on providing traffic control as required under the contract.
So albeit they're not charging us for that, we're somehow going to be assured they're going to do what they are supposed to do within the contract for
Yes.
each of these, they have that requirement?
Yes.
Right? Okay. All right, I won't burden you with any of the other questions, and we'll have faith that you guys have drilled down through this, no pun intended.
Yes, it was.
Thank you
Other
very much.
committee members with questions or comments? I would also note, Adam, that the total bid of $1.6 million is almost 20% below the engineering estimate of $2 million, thus coming in almost $400,000 below our engineer's estimate. Are there members of the public in the room who have any questions or comments? Jody, are there any online with questions or comments?
No one has their hand raised.
Okay. The motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Seeing none, that first item passes unanimously. Okay. Second item for the Finance Committee this evening is to consider awarding a contract for improvements to the pump station at Fenimore. In order to get the discussion underway, I will move that the Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to award a contract for Fenimore pump station improvements to Jurek Inc. In accordance with the bids received on Thursday, December 19th, with the recommendation of the Chief Financial Officer and the approval of the Director of Public Works and Township Engineer in the total amount of $394,731. Do I have a second? I do, from Vice President Kramer. Adam, can you tell us more about this?
This is for improvements at a pump station and the piping near it at Waverly Road and Youngsford Road. It includes sewer force main replacements, replacement of piping in a valve vault, wet well and grinder piping, or piping between those objects, and restoration to the site.
And it is also coming in under the engineering estimate by 10% or roughly $45,000.
Yes, and that includes the additional $10,000 allocated for the township to purchase and furnish equipment to the contractor for installation.
We're not awarding that because we're making those purchases, and is that included in the capital budget for this item?
It is.
For this project, okay. All right, committee members with questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, do any members of the public in the room have any questions or comments? Jody, any online?
No.
Okay. The motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, that item also carries unanimously. All right. The third item is for us to consider awarding a contract extension for the Information Technology Department, Managed Hosting and Support Services. I'm going to move that the Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to award a contract for an extension for information technology, managed hosting and support services in accordance with the recommendation of the Chief Financial Officer with the approval of the Director of Information Services with Omega Systems. Do I have a second? Vice President Kramer seconds. This is a little unusual. Adam, can you explain this?
Yes, so as mentioned in the issue briefing, we use Omega Systems for a number of various services that have kind of that relationship between us and the vendor have grown over the years. It started with managed support, managed security, and disaster recovery services. In 2020, we added on additional services such as virtual server hosting to replace some on-premises servers that were coming of age and needing replacement, as well as added security services over the last few years as cybersecurity has become an ever-increasing focus for everyone. The renewal with this vendor for some of its constituent services was ranging in the area of 10% for 2025 when they first reached out to us. We have a good relationship with the vendor. There were overtures made out to see if we can extend and possibly work on that to come to a more manageable cost increase. We were happy that they came back with holding the line on managed hosting and support services, which is the vast majority of the costs there, if we extend it through 2028. Smaller but separately, also managed security has a smaller increase than originally was advertised for us going into next year. Collectively, these savings over the next 3 years total about $167,000. And if you have any technical questions, we do have our Chief Technology Officer available for anything I might not be able to answer on the technology side.
Okay, thank you, Adam. So am I right that the managed hosting and support service, which is the bulk of the contract, is firm fixed pricing?
I believe so. I think there are certain aspects underneath, if we need additional licenses, would be passed through to us. If we have extra SharePoint licenses over the course of time, but on the basic services being provided, yes.
Because it looks like the second item, second line, managed security, is an estimated pricing, so not firm fixed pricing.
Yes.
Donia, would you like to say anything with regard to that pricing and your view of this contract extension?
Good evening. Yes, and as Adam has alluded, the pricing that you see in the issue briefing is that those are for the managed security. That pricing is due to a contract term that is to that date. we will revisit with our vendor to renegotiate with them to see what will be going forward. And for the hosted service, those changes as storage and operational costs for the vendor, and if it's going to be increased for the vendor, those costs are passed on to the township. However, because we have a long working relationship with the vendor, they are willing to work with us in order to keep that cost at a minimum for us.
Okay, thank you. Do you see any risks in entering into a contract extension that's essentially, you know, it would be a four-year contract?
The risk is much lower because we've been with the vendor since 2016, and we built up this repertoire with them and have this service that has been expanded because we have been receiving this service from them that is top tier, and it's exceptional that we are continuing this relationship with them, and extending this 4-year is just to build on this relationship that we have with them.
Okay, and you believe this company has the scale to meet our needs as well as to continue to be a viable company into the future?
Yes, I believe they are going to meet our need and exceed what we will need, especially in our security aspect, because they are acquiring technology that will better improve and enhance their system, and they will pass along that security to us because we are a part of them as a managed relationship.
Great, thank you. Do other members of the committee have any questions or comments on this item? Commissioner Courtney.
Thank you, Commissioner Zoff. It's more of a curiosity question. I see that we have still on-premises disaster recovery. What servers are we still maintaining on-premises? And is there a reason they have to be here?
Yes, we have approximately 10 servers that are very small in scale. One of those servers is a customized in-house built server that houses our business tax data, and we are also looking into a software that we will be migrating to the cloud as well. And another application server that is on-premise is due to the limitation of cloud that is unable to perform and exceed the expectation of the end user using that platform. So it needed to stay on-premise in order to perform that performance needed.
Can you tell me what service that's providing?
Yes, that service is for the QuickBooks server that our
Can you speak up a little bit?
I'm sorry. That is the QuickBooks server that our tax collector is using.
Okay. Will they, I mean, this is such a minor cost, but will they reduce that cost when we transition the first one into the cloud?
It will not be further reduced because there's other customized solution on that server other than the business tax.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. Other committee members with questions or comments on this item? Okay, seeing none, are there any members of the public in the room with questions or comments? Online, Jody. Okay, it's time to vote. This motion has been made and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Madam Secretary, that item carries unanimously. All right, item 4 is for us to consider approving the transmission of our 2025 real estate tax data to the tax collector. Adam, why do we need to do this?
Because the first class township code tells us we need to.
Okay. That sounds like a good reason.
But I will embellish a little bit. This is, of course, an annual item that we do at the start of the year. It's also a moment for us to reflect on the changes in our assessed value. The certified township assessed value is about $7 million less than we expected in the budget. It's second year in a row, unfortunately, that's happened. That amounts to about a $30,000 difference in current real estate tax revenue compared to what we anticipated. As you see there, this is the first year of an actual assessed value decline, which we had talked about during the budget process was occurring due to the combination of office space and office commercial property assessed values declining, as well as on the margins, some additional demolition work executed this year in anticipation of future developments, which is obviously just a timing issue.
Okay, thank you. Do committee members have any questions or comments on this item? Seeing none, do members of the public have any questions or comments on this item, either in the room or online? All right, I'll move that the Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Commissioners the authorization by the proper township officers to transmit to the tax collector the 2025 duplicate of the assessment of township real estate taxes at the rate of 4.462 mils, together with their warrant for collection pursuant to section 1713 of the First Class Township Code. Do I have a second to that item? I do, from Commissioner Bernheim. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Seeing none, that motion...
Sorry, there's abstentions here, right?
One abstention.
Excuse me. We do have an abstention. Passes unanimously with one abstention, Madam Secretary. Okay, that's item 4. Item 5, very important item. The appointments to the bid opening committee. I suspect this is a code-required action.
Yes, this is another item that occurs annually or with any changes to said members of the committee. So this affirms Commissioner Zelov, myself, and the Township Secretary as the primary members of the bid opening committee, and identifies several alternates in their absence.
Okay, questions or comments on this item by committee members, public members, or online members? Seeing none, I'll move that the Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the appointment of the following persons to the bid opening committee of Lower Merion Township, effective January 1, 2025, pursuant to the Code of the Township of Lower Merion, Chapter 5, Article 11, Section 5-70. V. Scott Zeloff, Commissioner, Adam Chomsky, Chief Financial Officer, and Jody Kelly, Township Secretary. With 4 alternates, they are Ray Courtney, Commissioner, Sean Whalen, Esquire, Commissioner, Lori Jennings, Public Information Officer, and Christopher Weldy, Assistant Director of Finance. Do I have a second? I do, from Commissioner Courtney. The motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Any opposed? Any abstentions? That motion carries unanimously. Okay, the next item is also an item that we consider every year at this time, is for the approval to appropriate to the volunteer fire companies based on the recently approved 2025 budget. Tell us a little more, Adam.
Yes, this formally approves the payments to the fire companies as appropriated in the 2025 budget at the amount of $390,800. We also make some small reimbursements directly to the fire companies for workers' comp insurance premiums and basic internet service.
Okay. And what is the frequency of payments? Is it monthly? Is it quarterly?
It is quarterly.
Okay. Is the same amount to each of the 6 fire companies? And as you indicated, the amount is almost $400,000 per fire company. Do committee members have any questions or comments on this item? Commissioner Bernheim.
Yeah, thank you very much. And it's noted in the resolution that during this period of time, because it's not a lump sum payment, during this period of time, it's necessary for the fire companies to follow certain rules of that procedure, some of that which includes making sure that financially they are providing us information that we need regarding their own well-being and how they're handling things. We have done that with cooperation for the most part with all the fire companies, but it's important to know that that's something that this board will continue to very strongly look to see that continues. Thank you.
Other committee members with questions or comments? I would like to comment that even though the township contributes very meaningfully to each of our 6 primarily volunteer fire companies, your contributions, members of this community, both property owners, the members of the public, as well as business owners and institutions, your contributions are not only welcome but needed. And we rely greatly on our primarily volunteer fire service to protect our lives and our property. So with that, I will move that the Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Commissioners authorizing the, I will start that over. I will move that the Finance Committee recommend to the Board of Commissioners adoption of a resolution authorizing payments of the annual appropriations quarterly in the amount of $390,800 for each of our 6 volunteer fire companies. Do I have a second? I do, from Commissioner Bernheim. The motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Seeing none, Madam Secretary, did I ask for public comment on that item?
I don't think you did.
Are there any members of the public who wish to vote wish to comment even though we have voted? Good. Are there any online, Madam Secretary?
No.
Okay. The motion passes unanimously. There's a final item for consideration by the Finance Committee. It is an unusual item. It's for us to consider authorizing to advertise an ordinance, Chapter A 167 fees, administrative code for the tax collector. The tax collector is independently elected in this township. The tax collector does not work for the township manager nor for the township commissioners. Nevertheless, this is in front of us. Do any commissioners have any comments or questions regarding this before we start? I'm going to start with our township manager. Ernie, can you tell us why this item is before us?
Certainly. The tax collector, as an elected official, the code that provides for the tax collector does not provide a specific provision with respect to charging fees for extra services beyond just collection of taxes. And it's a common practice of tax collectors to charge fees for these extra services. However, the only way they can be imposed based upon the law and court decisions back in the 80s is for the municipality who has the power to set fees to establish those fees. So these fees you're considering tonight that have been recommended for revision by our tax collector have been in our code for years. You are simply adjusting the fees that are already in your code with respect to these additional services provided by the tax collector.
Okay. All right. With that, I guess I'd like to ask our tax collector to come up and speak to the 2 fees that he is asking us to consider increasing.
Good evening. Thank you, Scott. Primarily,
And Sam, if you wouldn't mind introducing yourself.
I'm sorry. Oh, I'm sorry. I'm Sam Maidenbaum, Township Tax Collector. I have been since January 1 of 2007. I collect real estate taxes for the township, the county, the school district, and the solid waste fees and the sanitary sewer rent bill. Most of the fees that I propose to increase are a part of financing the office, and the certification fee has not been raised in 8 years, and the fee for producing files of taxes to the escrow agents, primarily the largest ones, in particular CoreLogic, hasn't been raised since it was implemented in probably 2008. There are multiple sources of revenue into the tax collector's office that help fund the salaries, the staff, banking fees, essentially insurance, and inflation has been fairly significant over the last 8 years.
Okay. I'll start with some questions. Sam, can you give us some context on the tax certification fee in terms of, when we look at fees, we typically we get information that's, I guess, evidence of the fees cover the costs. So we are also told that we shouldn't be raising fees beyond what it costs. And I'm referring to recreation fees, building permit fees, and the like, which is what we typically see. We don't, of course, typically see the fees charged by your office. So I guess, can you give us some more context? And I guess I would say on both the tax certification fee as well as the bulk mortgage filing fee, which you're proposing to go from 55 cents a parcel to $1 a parcel.
That's correct. The fees cover what it takes to run the office. I'm not going to, and it's not necessarily specific to the service. The fees are pretty consistent with other municipalities. In fact, in two of our neighboring townships, the fees are even larger for certification fees. I wouldn't know how to break out the actual cost of generating a certification. Part of the certification is the cost of the certification is just accurately posting payments. You have to track the payments accurately, timely, and I think we do that very well. And we turn our certifications around in 2 days, hours. If it's a rush certification, we have a rush fee, an add-on of $25. That hasn't changed since before I was here. We never saw fit to do that. But it's all about providing the service. Look, once data's in a computer, does it cost you a lot of money to pull the data out of the computer? I'm not going to argue that. That would insult the board. But it's all part of the fees, that help keep the tax collector's office solvent, accurate, with a high-quality staff.
Commissioner Zelf, may I ask a question which I think may assist this process?
Well, go ahead. Before we do that, so can you explain the parcel fee? Because it's essentially doubling the fee from 55 cents to $1 a parcel. Is that, can you explain what that service is or what that function is?
When a company like CoreLogic wants to pay, we have a highly automated process of data coming in from CoreLogic. We turn it around promptly, and we tell them exactly what they owe on each parcel electronically. They don't have to ferret anything out. And we have special programs that run off of our existing systems special programs that generate the information in exactly the format they need. And again, I have to go back to inflation, okay? it's the cost of running the office has gone up.
So does CoreLogic then use that to make the monthly payments out of escrow?
Well, it's not,
or taxes?
they're not monthly, they're once a year for each tax bill. But how they bill it, but, you know, we have an extraordinarily accurate process. When CoreLogic gives us the numbers, they're working directly from our numbers. And about the only exceptions we ever have on that is where taxpayers get confused and they forget they have a mortgage and they pay before CoreLogic does. So by the time the money comes to us from CoreLogic, we have to send the money back to CoreLogic.
Okay. Other committee members with questions or comments? I'll start with Commissioner Burnham.
Yeah, thank you very much, Senator. Appreciate that. What I was going to ask, and to some degree you provided the information, people listening to this, some may not understand exactly what a tax certification is and what the bulk mortgage filing is, and you've given some explanation of that, which would help maybe drill down just a little bit more, you know, so people know how often you're doing this and what that information is, because there's the time value of the labor of the people who are doing it and the frequency by which they're doing it.
Well,
so maybe even just say, you know, for the tax certification, that's giving what information to whom?
We have a tax certification. Currently, with, you know, with that is needed by any title agent for the sale or the refi of a property. Our certification is every piece of information that a title agent needs is on our certification. Township taxes, the status of whether it's paid, what the billed amount is, whether there's a balance due. It's the township, the school, the trash fee, the sewer fee, and we also include all of the prior year liens for trash and sewer as a benefit to the township. I'm not the collector of that, that's done in the finance department, but we work hand in hand together, and you know, this is, so it's basically one-stop shopping. I mean, when we talked about some of the surrounding townships, in Haverford Township and Radnor Township, they're home rule townships, so you have, your school taxes are collected by the school districts, the county taxes are collected by Delaware County, and the municipal taxes are collected by each municipality. So if you want a certification, you actually need 3 certifications.
Okay.
So while any individual certification there is less, I may have it backwards, I can't remember, but we did a little bit of research. It's $80 in one township and $60 in another township.
And correct me if I'm wrong, but the title insurance companies, for example, who are asking for this information at a closing, they need that in connection with policies they're issued, so they're probably willing to pay for it, correct?
They are willing to pay for it, and there's a premium on, do I get it quickly? You know, you get, you know, some of them, you know, they're working weeks in advance. It's not unusual to get kind of a frantic phone call that says, I'm settling tomorrow and I don't have the data, you know, what can I do to get a certification?
And whether they pass that on down the line to purchaser or seller, that's out of your control.
I'm sure they do pass it on down the line, and there are agencies that are intermediates. There's a Charles Jones is a large one. We do a lot of certifications directly to Charles Jones, and I know that I don't know the exact amount, but I know they mark up my certifications.
Right. Yeah, there are other statutory requirements of what they can and can't do. And then for the bulk mortgage filing fee, when you talk about bulk mortgages, what are you referring to?
So, not all, but a huge percentage of the escrowed accounts, certainly from all the big banks, maybe not the small banks and not some of the small credit unions, they work through CoreLogic. CoreLogic is a third party. So a TD Bank or something like that probably hands all of their escrow accounts twice a year in Pennsylvania, because you've got your township, your municipal bill, and your school bill. They say, here's my file, I need information on all of this. CoreLogic has the infrastructure, they divide it up. They know, and then they contact Lower Merion, and they say, here are our parcels, you know, here are the parcels we want information on in Lower Merion. We provide it in a file, goes back into CoreLogic. CoreLogic, gets it back to TD, collects the money, and then eventually comes right back to us in electronic format.
Okay. And then last question, I really appreciate you responding. Knowing you as a number cruncher, what would you estimate the increase will be to, your department?
Say that again.
Yeah, sure. How much additional funds do you anticipate this will generate for you?
Well, CoreLogic is the vast bulk. Lately, and they've absorbed even Wells Fargo. I've got about 7,000 parcels in a CoreLogic file. So, if we're doubling it, for example, from, let's just, I'm rounding it, but 50 cents to $1. If I was getting $3,500, I'm getting $7,000. And that request will come in twice a year.
Okay.
In fact, we have the request right now. CoreLogic has already paid for it. Every time I talk to my representatives at CoreLogic, they're just like happy with the response we give them. It's smooth, it's clean. We don't send them pieces of paper or anything like that. They can't cope with that.
Right. Okay. All right. So thank you very much.
You're welcome.
Appreciate it.
Other committee members with questions or comments for our tax collector on this item? Okay. Does the member of the public in the room have any questions or comments on this item? Jody, any others?
Nope.
Okay, thank you very much, Sam. The motion has not been made. I will move that the Finance Committee recommended the Board of Commissioners authorizing the Township Secretary to advertise notice of intent to adopt an ordinance to amend the code of the Township of Lower Merion, Chapter A 167 fees, to provide for an increase in fees relating to tax collection for the tax certification fee and the bulk mortgage filing fee as specified in the attached memo. Do I have a second? I do, from Commissioner Bernheim. Motion's been made and seconded. All those in favor, raise your hand. Are there any opposed? Are there any abstentions? Madam Secretary, with a pretty good night, that item carries unanimously. And President Sinai, that concludes the first Finance Committee meeting of 2025.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Zolob. We have one committee meeting left for this evening. It's the Building and Planning Committee, and I recognize its chair, Commissioner Grimes.
Tonight is the authorization to release funds held in escrow. We only have one item. So I will move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval to release funds held in escrow as improvement guarantees in accordance with Section 135-7 of the Township Code for the following: 601, 609, 615, and 620 Writers Ferry Road, escrow release number 3, the final release for $9,000. Is there a second? Thank you, Vice President Kramer. Any commissioner questions or comments for staff on this? Is there any public comment on this? No one online. So I'll call the vote. All those in favor, raise your hands, signify aye. Any opposed? Any abstentions? I cannot see our commissioners online, so. Actually, I can see them.
So they did.
Yes, I see they're small. They have to have big hands for me to see them. But I'll assume everyone was approving, so approved unanimously.
They were.
Okay, thank you. The next item is the preliminary lot line change for 1425 and 1445 Mount Pleasant Road in Villanova. I see our Building and Planning Director, Chris Leswing, here. So Chris, do you want to make some intro comments?
Sure. I'll explain the application. The applicant's also here, as are their professionals. This is a two-lot subdivision or lot line change in Villanova. These are two existing lots that were subdivided out in the 1970s. And let me show you what's actually proposed. They're out on Mount Pleasant Road, out in the far western part of the township, at the intersection of Prospect Hill Road and Mount Pleasant Road. Currently, there are two parcels, and they have a little irregular lot line between them. These parcels were purchased by somebody years ago, and they've kind of fallen into disrepair. Somebody had tried to renovate the properties and looked at doing some things, and now they've been purchased by a new owner. It was an old estate back in, it was actually a very old property in the township, and it has a manor house, and then it had a garage, and it has a forecourt. And when it was divided into something that could become 2 single-family homes. There was the old carriage house and the manor house. And the garages went with the manor house. They're actually more designed to be part of the garage sort of property. So as somebody's bringing this in to renovate the properties, put it back online, they're subdividing the property to put the garages back on the other property. And that's what this is really about. It's not a clean subdivision line in the middle. The line has been changed, and it's actually been modified via the Historic Commission, as requested the Historic Commission, to reflect some of the existing natural features. As I mentioned, this is an old estate. It has lots of neat old fountains. It's got some carriage houses. It's got a lot of old features. It's kind of slopey, and that line is designed to address those concerns and preserve those things on both sides of the property. So this is the existing property, as I mentioned. This is the manor house over here on 1425 is the big house. And then at the bottom, there's the other house that's being fixed. And 1445 is on the inventory. What this lot line change does is it takes that middle yellow box, which is a garage, and it puts it on 1445 from 1425. In staff's opinion, it's really where it's supposed to be. It's putting it back to where it originally was. This is the manor house that's here today. It's been, you can see a lot of the stone in the middle. It's very old, but it's had several inappropriate additions over the years. It's kind of fallen into disrepair. This is on the market, but you can also see some of the features. There's a fountain, there's a spring house, there's a lot of other elements to it. This is the other property of the main house. This is the residence. It had been started for construction. That owner abandoned it. And then this is the garage that is going to go to that second property. It's going to be put back in there. It's all part of a larger forecourt that we have. These buildings relate to that picture that I showed you here. It shows it's more of a unified collection of buildings. And that's simply what this is about. With any of these lot line changes, one of the things the staff looks at is it appropriate? Does it respect natural features? Does it respect historic features? And could it lead to future subdivision? This does not lead to any future subdivision. And in order to make sure that there isn't a subdivision, the applicant is seeking several waivers for this. One is not to put in sidewalks. Right? It's coming back, it triggers, this is going through the subdivision code. A lot line change is technically a subdivision, it falls within the subdivision code. So sidewalks have been required here. This is an area without sidewalks. What we're going to do is recommend by standard practice deferring those sidewalks till the time that the Board of Commissioners deems them to be appropriate. Staff is okay, that seems to be standard practice for what we're doing. Then there are also 2 other waivers that are required. This isn't necessarily a clean line. As you can see, it doesn't go through, and it's not just like one continuous line. It's technically an irregular line. This irregular line helps to preserve natural features and historic features. Staff is fine with that going forward. It's internal. There's no harm to this in the rest of the community. And then the final waiver is at the bottom of this where the new lot line meets Mount Pleasant Road. That line technically in our code is supposed to be at a right angle to Mount Pleasant Road. This mirrors what's there on the site, and it also helps by keeping it at this angle. It helps to keep this in compliance with zoning. There are frontage requirements and not to make a larger non-conformity of this property. Whatever it is with it, where that line meets, it will not trigger any further subdivision. There's really no harm there. It's just memorializing existing conditions. On Monday's Planning Commission meeting, there was a surprising amount of neighbor feedback. Because this property had been under renovation for many years, and then kind of somebody walked away from it, there had been some debris and trash, and neighbors brought that to our attention, and our staff has been working with the owner to remove some of that stuff. We actually had Public Works go out, and we've charged them for picking up some of the work. So anything in the right-of-way along the property edges has been cleaned up. One of the neighbors had mentioned that several trees had been removed along Prospect Hill Road. And part of our observations, we looked at that, and as you go up, it looks like the trees were just never there. And we looked back on Google Earth, and there were a lot of trees. And as you can see, they were completely removed. Some of these are in the right-of-way. So what we would like to propose, because this is in the triggering the saldo again, is a new condition that street trees shall be installed per subdivision and land development code section 135.5.1C7 and per the direction of the township arborist. That way Public Works can work with the applicant to make sure the trees go in the pattern where they're appropriate. We've spoken to the applicant. They're acceptable to all the conditions, including the new condition. I'm here to answer any questions, as is the applicant.
Okay, thank you. Just to clarify something, because you mentioned issues the neighbors have had over time. In terms of what's before the board tonight, which is the lot line change, are considerations, about how if the property might have been unkempt or might be unkempt, is that relevant to a lot line change application?
It's not, but we did include a condition that the property will be maintained, and there is a condition in there that some of the debris, and you'll see some of that in some of the pictures I showed, will be removed, and the applicant's agreeable to doing that. They seem to be moving in. They have, from our conversations with them, every intention of renovating these properties and then moving on.
Right, and just to be clear, I think you said this, but the new condition about the trees, that's okay with the applicant also?
The applicant, yes, and they're nodding yes.
Okay, thank you. Are there any commissioners who have any questions or comments for Chris? Commissioner Churchill.
Thank you. Just regarding sidewalks, does this property, is it close to any school or commercial or transportation areas?
This property couldn't be further from any public transportation, school, or commercial area within the township.
I think you answered my question. Thank you. And we're just deferring, we're not...
You're just deferring.
Okay.
The board still has the ability to require them when they see fit.
Okay.
We have to get you to the western part of the township more often, Commissioner.
That's okay. I understand.
Okay, any other commissioners? Questions, comments? I'm going to put a motion on the table, then I'll do public comment. I'm going to move for recommendation of the Board of Commissioners approval of a preliminary lot line change for 1425 and 1445 Mount Pleasant Road in Villanova. Plan shows the transfer of 10,297 square feet from lot number 2 from 1425 Mount Pleasant Road to lot number 1, 1445 Mount Pleasant Road. This will move the existing L-shaped masonry and framed garage from 1425 Mount Pleasant onto 1445 Mount Pleasant Road, and the existing one-story pool house entirely located on 1425 Mount Pleasant Road. In addition, I move to approve the following waivers from the Township Code, which are recommended by the Planning Commission. A, deferral from section 135-4.9.F1 to not provide sidewalks along the frontages of 1425 and 1445 Mount Pleasant, including those properties' frontages along Prospect Hill Road until such time as they're required by the Board of Commissioners. B, section 135-4.4.B2 to create a lot which is excessively irregular. And C, section 135-4.4.B3 to not provide right angles or radial to the rights of way lines on sidelines of a lot. And I would also move to recommend approval with the new condition that was recommended by staff, which I'm going to label condition 11A, that street trees shall be installed per subdivision and land development code section 135-5.1C.7 per the direction of the township arborist. Is there a second? Thank you, Vice President Kramer. We'll now move to public comment. Is there anyone in the public who'd like to offer comment? Seeing none. Anyone online? No. Anything further from anyone on the board with that big motion? Okay, I will call the vote. All those in favor, raise your hand, signify aye. Thank you. Any opposed, raise your hand. Seeing none. Any abstentions? Seeing none, the motion carries. Thank you, and thank you, Chris. The next is on page 14 of the updated agendas. This is the conditional use application for 230 Rock Hill Road in Bala, Cynwyd. Mr. Doyle, do you have some comments that you'd like to make?
Yeah, just give you a background of the application itself. This is a conditional use application for a land use along Rock Hill Road. It's one of 4 properties that constitute a commercial conglomerate of lots. The applicant is applying for just the use. There are no land development associated with the project at this time. So just to give you a background here, in 2023, the township adopted the ordinance to regulate federal firearms. Under Article 10 of the code, 1014 specifically, the applicant then did appeal this in later 2024. And we're here now with this conditional use application under limited scrutiny from the Montgomery County Court of Common Pleas that regulates the regulations that we had created in Article 10 that was formally adopted. So for this evening, this is under review from the Board of Commissioners.
Great. Okay, thank you. And just to clarify, because it mentioned our staff memo was a little confusing, and maybe if our solicitor wants to weigh in. When we passed the ordinance, there are a number of conditions that the township put on an FFL that would be put in an area where it's permitted, and the Montgomery County Court of Common Pleas has enjoined us from enforcing most of those conditions.
Yeah, that is correct. Only 3 conditions remain. I believe it's that the applicant identify any fictitious name that'll be used in association with the FFL, complies with the federal regulations for being within a school zone, and I'm blanking on what the third one is.
Yeah, I don't mean to put you on the spot, but it was only like 3 of them.
Their application at the
Yeah,
township.
keeping the FFL on file. They were all benign conditions. Everything else that was in the ordinance originally, Judge Brank on the Court of Common Pleas enjoined, and that's definitive at this point.
Okay, so thank you. And thanks. So I'm going to open this up for comments, questions from board members, either although he's sitting down, for Charlie or for the solicitor. Commissioner Bernheim.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's just a matter of point of clarity, because in this situation, words matter. And I'm sure Charlie didn't mean to give any implication different than when you made the say regulate FFLs. We're not doing that. This is a zoning matter, strictly zoning. We're not regulating, the FFL per se. Other than that, I think what's before the board for the conditional use has been spelled out for us. Thank you.
Thank you. Any other commissioners with questions or comments? Commissioner Woodring.
This is the time to make a comment, right? Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, I just wanted to take a moment and thank the residents who attended the conditional use hearing, specifically Ms. Lynn and Mr. Barron. Additionally, I wanted to thank our conditional use hearing officer for her fantastic work and for this comprehensive report. It lays out the case for the conditional use in great detail. I have had discussions with some residents who are concerned about this application, but also a few who have supported it. While I may have my own personal beliefs on the use in question from a broader sense, that's not what we're voting on this evening. Rather, it's our duty tonight to vote on what's presented to us in this conditional use report. So with this report that we have today, I'm confident that this board has what it needs to move forward on this vote.
Okay.
Thank you.
Thank you, Commissioner Woodring. Anyone else? Okay, so I would just say my assessment is exactly what Commissioner Woodring said. Our conditional use hearing officer, Laufman, did her usual very comprehensive job in producing a report that I think conclusively, had the finding that the board, that the criteria for granting the conditional use is there, with the conditions that we're able to enforce that we just talked about with the solicitor. So while I think it's understandable that many residents have strong feelings about this application, the applicant, in my opinion, has met the criteria. So with that, I'm going to put a motion on the floor, and then we'll see if there's public comment. I will move for recommendation of the Board of Commissioners, adoption of a resolution approving a conditional use application for 230 Rock Hill Road in Bala, Cynwyd. The applicant is seeking conditional use approval to operate a federal firearms license business at 230 Rock Hill Road in Bala, Cynwyd, pursuant to zoning code section 155-5.1, table 5.3 permitted uses, and section 155-10.14 federal firearms licensing. Is there a second? Thank you, Commissioner Woodring. Okay, we'll now open this for public comment. If there's anyone with public comment on this? Seeing none, no one online. Okay, anything further from any commissioners? Seeing none, we'll vote. All those in favor, please raise your hand, signifying aye. Thank you. Any opposed? I see one, Commissioner Stevenson. Any abstentions? See none. So, the motion is approved. Commissioner Stevenson, can we put this on the consent calendar? Okay, I take that as a yes. Thank you very much. All right. The next is the certificates of appropriateness on page 74, of which there are 3. Would any commissioners like to hear individual discussion on any of these applications? So I'm seeing none, so I'm going to move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners approval of the following certificates of appropriateness as recommended by the Historical Architectural Review Board at their meeting held on January 7, 2025. 901 Youngsford Road, Gladwin Historic District 2501, approval to construct new pool house, and to add a pedestrian door to a previously approved new garage, citing Secretary of the Interior Standard 10. 7 East Lancaster Avenue, Ardmore Commercial Historic District 25-02, approval to add cellular antennas on the rooftop of the former Marion Title and Trust Company, with a request from HARB to reduce the height of this antennas, citing Secretary of the Interior Standards 9 and 10. Or 17 West Lancaster Avenue, Ardmore Commercial Historic District 2503, approval to repair storefront cladding and install 2 signs, citing Secretary of the Interior Standards 9 and 10. Is there a second? Thank you, Vice President Kramer. President Sinai.
Apologies, I did have a question about one of them. I was just too slow.
No, you're never too slow, President Sinai. You can do that now.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Grimes. Greg, just briefly on the cellular antennas on the top of Marion Title and Trust. It looks like the new antennas are about the same height as the old antennas. But will they be reduced? That's the request. It says that there's been a request to reduce the height. I don't know if it's a binding request or whether we'll take a look at it.
Right, so we haven't gotten any feedback since the meeting, but it might help a bit if I were to show on the screen exactly what is going on here. So as you all know, excuse me a second, the Marion Title and Trust building, formerly Primavera Pizza Kitchen, now DePaul's Kitchen, DePaul's Table rather, has a number of cellular antennas on the roof. HARB sees applications for changes to these antennas pretty frequently, although it's been about 2 years since the last one. The proposed antennas would be at 3 different locations on the roof. They would actually be utilizing existing mounting stands. So they would be mounted directly above existing antennas, and they're actually quite a bit smaller in height than some of the other antennas up there. I think the technology is getting a bit better, so it's getting more compact. So HARB, in order to kind of reduce the visual impact of these antennas, they asked the applicant to look into whether it'd be possible to lower those new antennas a bit on those mounting poles. So that was the request there.
Thank you. And just one quick follow-up. I mean, there is such a thing as like stealthing antennas. Is there anything in our historic code that would trigger a requirement to sort of disguise these things so they don't stick out like antennas? I'm guessing not, since what we're seeing here is antennas.
No, you see that sometimes where a change in color can reduce the visual impact, or if there are architectural elements like alcoves where antennas can be kind of inserted and made kind of less visually prominent. This is not a building where those kinds of things would be useful. Actually, the lighter color of the antennas blends in a bit better with the sky. So I think this is probably the best that can be done here.
Okay, thank you very much, Greg. Thank you, Commissioner
Thank
Grant.
you. Anyone else? Any other questions, comments? Okay, seeing none. I will call the vote on all three applications. All those in favor, please say aye. Raise your hands. Thank you. Any opposed? Any abstentions? Passes unanimously. Okay, the final item on our agenda are the Historical Commission applications, of which there are three. Would any commissioners like to see a presentation on any of these applications? Okay, so I will move, subject to commissioners having the ability to make comments after the motion. I will move to recommend to the Board of Commissioners the following applications as recommended by the Historical Commission at their meeting held on December 16, 2024. 415 City Avenue, Unit F2, Marion Station, Yorkland Manor, Class 2, 2024-R-25. Approval to replace 5 windows with 1 unit, within 1 unit of the Yorkland Manor condominium building with a 0-day delay, citing Secretary of the Interior Standards 5 and 9. 49 Anderson Avenue, 5 Coulter Avenue, Ardmore Suburban Square, Class 2, 2024-R-28. Approval to install 4 awnings along the Coulter Avenue facade, acrylic dimensional letters over the Anderson Avenue entrance, and a bracket-mounted projecting sign at the corner, with a subcommittee to review location and installation details, citing Secretary of the Interior Standard 9. And 1117 Old Gulf Road, 601 North Ithan Avenue, Bryn Mawr Beaumont Gatehouse, Class 2, 2024-R-29. Approval to modify door openings with a subcommittee to review details as required, citing Secretary of the Interior Standard 9. Is there a second? I'm going to go with Commissioner Woodring on this, nothing personal. Vice President Kramer. So, are there any further commissioner questions or comments on any of these? Seeing none, is there any public comment on any of these applications? Okay, Ms. Morad, you can go right ahead.
Hello, my name is Carla Morad. I live in Marion, and I'm a co-owner at the Yorkland Manor Condominium Association. So I'm commenting on the Historic Commission's review of the request to replace windows, 5 double-hung original wood windows in a unit at Yorkland Manor. I just wanted to point out to the committee members that I did attend the 2 hearings on this issue because many owners at Yorkland Manor, many of us are very appreciative that Yorkland Manor is on our township's historic resources inventory as a Class 2 structure, and we do think that maintaining the architectural integrity of our building is part of its priceless value to the township and its market value to owners. The one thing I wanted to say when I read the review that you've seen is that the recommendation, I think, just as it happens to be worded, does not reflect the opinion that was expressed by the Architectural Review Board during its 2 meetings on this application. Although the comment, the additional comment, does help explain the Historical Commission's conclusion. That is, the Historical Commission did unanimously disapprove of the replacement windows that had been proposed. But they did see some extenuating circumstances for the application, but also did something to try and help ensure that in the future, when owners in our historic resource, Class 2, want to replace historic elements like the windows. There will be standards in place that are consistent with our historical commission's standards. So I'm referring to the bolded part of the additional historical commission comment that the commission established a subcommittee to engage with the building management and the condo association to establish guidelines for future alterations of the exterior envelope, including steel casement and wood double hung windows that are more in line with historic preservation standards. So, and as a Lower Merion Township resident, I really appreciate the fact that we have a relatively new position, which Greg holds, and that the Historical Commission continues to try and help us maintain the integrity of our important historical structures. Thank you.
Thank you. Is there any other public comment? None. Okay, is there any response to public? Anyone who wants to respond? President Sinai.
Thank you, Commissioner Grimes. And I just wanted to respond to Ms. Murat. Thank you for the comments. Your Yorkland Manor is in Ward 12. It is a beautiful building. Christian Bush, who's the head of our historical commission, was kind enough to reach out to me about this property in advance of this meeting. And like with many of our older buildings that need historical preservation, the situation here is complicated. There are many, many windows on this building, and they are owned by different people, in effect, because they're different condominium units, and they get replaced at different times, and not everyone, has always known to consult the historical commission, and so you're faced with the situation of, well, how do we get it on the right track going forward? And I think there's been a lot of great work done setting the groundwork to really have a good trajectory for this building going forward. And I am really grateful for the residents of Yorkland Manor, the management of Yorkland Manor, and especially our historical team, the historical commission, and Greg, of course, for working so hard for this really prominent and beautiful building. Thank you, Commissioner Grimes.
Thank you. Anyone else? Okay, go ahead, Greg.
Could I briefly note, Commissioner Grimes, I want to thank Ms. Murat also for writing to me with her concerns and pointing out some admittedly confusing wording on the slides, where the one is titled Recommendations, the one that's always after the title slide for each Harbin HC action or HC item. And with that in mind, going ahead, that title will read Action, because it doesn't actually reflect the word-for-word recommendation of the Harbin HC. So that'll be what we do going ahead.
Okay, thank you. All right, anyone else? Saying no, we will call the vote. All those in favor, this is not all of the Historical Commission applications. All those in favor, raise your hand, signifying aye. Any opposed? Seeing none. Any abstentions? Seeing none. The motion carries unanimously. President Sinai, that concludes the Building and Planning Committee business tonight.
Thank you very much, Commissioner Grimes. Ladies and gentlemen, may the rest of 2025 go as well as this evening has. Thank you very much. We're concluded for tonight.
We have to do a study.